If you have a shady garden, maybe a patio or porch that has lots of shade, it can be a challenge to find flowers that are going to give you lots of blooms in those locations. But I have a solution for you, and that would be impatiens. So today we're going to be taking a look at these plants, how wonderful they can help to brighten your shady landscape. And we're also going to be looking at some things to avoid, as well as tips to get the best results for these plants. We'll also look at a surprise that happened when I tried planting some of these seeds. If you've never been here before, my name is Marlene. Welcome to my home and garden channel. Welcome everyone. Botanical name for this plant is Impatiens walleriana, but it goes by so many other different names. Busy Lizzie, Balsam, Sultana. It also goes by Patient Lucy, Patience Plants, Zanzibar Balsam. So if you know why any of these names were given to it, let me know. I'll be happy to hear in the comments. They do grow as perennials in growing zones 10 to 11. Other than that, they're annuals that don't survive the winter. They're not to be confused with their cousins sun patients, which are bred to take full sun or part sun. You can see that they look pretty similar, and you can have the option of having one for sun and one for shade if that's, you have different spots in your garden. But these sun patients are not the only ones with color. Your impatiens have lots of colors too. As you can see right here, we have pinks, we have whites, we have purples, oranges, peaches. There's so many different colors. They were going for $9.98 for these flats right here at Home Depot a few weeks ago when I did that Home Depot video for you. And it's not sponsored, by the way. We're going to take a look at watering needs. We're going to take a look at pests and diseases and just some other things that are going to help you to get the best out of your plants. I'm going to be planting some today. Bear in mind, guys, that when you go to purchase them, the first thing you want to do is to get healthy plants to start. If they're leggy like these ones on the left right here, that's not the best choice, because that means that they were reaching for light or something else and they're already stressed out. So get ones like the ones on the right, where they're off to a healthier start, so that way your plant has a better start, and also they're less prone to pests and diseases, when the plant is healthier. So these are the ones that I chose. I got 3 of them right here. These are 4-inch containers that I picked up, and I did follow my own advice. I tried to get the ones that looked, more lower and more compact and just looking a lot healthier. And these were 4-inch containers. They were going for $1.98, which is a good price, I think, for these. And you can see they have lots of blooms and they're already pollinators already trying to come through, and they haven't even been planted out yet, guys. But here's what I'm going to be using: my trowel. So if you're, just doing this for the first time, trowel is good to, help with lifting the soil, digging it around and all of that. That's a container I'm going to be using, which I've had for so many years, and I absolutely love it. This is my watering can right here with water ready to go. And it's good to have everything that you need so that once you start, you just keep going. So we're going to make a soil mix right here. If you're doing it in the ground, you can just use like garden soil and, add some fertilizer to it. Compost is great. If you can get, your own, that's wonderful. If not, you can get from the store. And of course, we have some potting mix. So if you're doing it in a container, you would just want to use the potting mix and a little bit of the compost in there as well. We're also going to be using some mulch right here. And as I go through the steps, you'll see how I use the different things over there. So back to my wonderful container here, guys, that I've had for so many years, and I just love it. The main thing to be sure of is that you have holes in the bottom, because this plant can have root rot. So it needs to have the water drain out, so that will not be an issue for it. And what I like to do is I like to get a coffee filter and just put, like little slits in them and place at the bottom. And this is going to prevent the soil from coming out, because it can do that, especially if the holes are a little bit larger. So when you put that in there, it helps in that case. And also I find it tends to keep ants, because sometimes, ants may want to come up on your plant. It tends to keep them back a little bit. And this is a compost that I'm using right here. Of course, you could use whatever one you prefer. And, guys, if you're able to do your own composting, more power to you. Wish I was able to, but just not at the moment. So I'm just going in and adding it in, making sure it's properly aerated, because you want your soil to be nice and airy. And then I'm going in and just mixing everything together. And then once you fill it in, you want to make sure you leave at least about 2 inches from the lid, just to make sure you have enough space. And you'll see, how it's going to be done as we go along on the various steps. And what I typically recommend is that you place your plants on the container before you start, so that way you have an idea of where you're going to put what and how it's going to look best as far as the arrangement that you have in mind. Now we're going to go ahead and start to plant them out. And I always recommend giving them a little bit of a soak, maybe like the evening before, or if you're doing it, if you maybe the morning before, allow some of the water to drain off. And that way, when you're taking the plant out, it's a lot easier to come out. It doesn't damage the roots as much. And it just makes it a little easier in the whole process for you. And so I'm going in and just placing it in there. And then I'm going in and covering it with some of the soil. You always want to make sure that you cover the top of the soil that it comes in from the garden center with some of your own potting soil, because it offers, better insulation from the plant drying out and all of that. Because those potting mixes that they have in these containers to start off, they're not that sustaining. So you want to be sure that you're going to cover them over so your plant will be able to retain the moisture. And your roots should be looking nice and white like how these are looking right here. You shouldn't have any odor coming from your plant. If they're looking brown, kind of like gray or anything like that, then you would want to take them back, because that means that your plant is starting off very badly already. They're not healthy and they may not be able to survive or do very, very poorly. And typically I try to just place them, so they kind of have enough space to spill over a little bit to the sides. I try to put them towards the middle, but not, just like one in the middle. You want to put at least 3 of them. If they're smaller, you can start them smaller as well too, but just put them so they'll spread out evenly, as best as you can. It's not a perfect science, of course, but, just, to make it eye-catching from when you've just started out. And you can get smaller plants too, if you want, like the packs I showed you earlier, the flats. So you maybe could put a little bit more in the container if you like. But either way, they're going to come up and they're going to be absolutely wonderful. I'm just going in here and placing everything over. And then once that is done, I'm going to go in and just get it watered, which I did here. And this is always very relaxing for me, guys, just watering my plants and just watching it go right through. And if you are using soil like heavy clay soil, which is a very bad idea, and you're watering and you're not seeing the water just draining right down through it, that's usually a bad sign that, like if the water is sitting on top, it means that the soil is way too dense and it's not good for your plant. So you'll definitely want to see your water just soaking in and doing really well as far as, penetrating the soil and giving your plant exactly what it needs, starting out and moving forward. And good check too is to make sure that you see water running from the bottom, so it got a good soak and you are good to go to the next phase, which is to add mulch. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, guys, you know that I always, well, not always, but I usually try to put mulch on my plants. If they're seedlings, like they're really tiny, I'm not going to put them there yet. But once they're established to a reasonable size, I'm going to put the mulch in so they can get going. And what the mulch does is that it keeps weeds out and it helps to lock moisture in. And that's a wonderful thing. So over here, I'm just filling it out with it. And I like to use pine bark mulch or brown mulch, but you can use whichever one you prefer. The only ones I avoid, like I've said in previous videos, is I don't like the ones that have the red dye on them, because, I'd like my things more organic. And I don't like the ones that are made from rubber either. But, just do what works best for you. And then once we put the mulch in, we want to go ahead and give it a nice soak, because if you just leave the mulch on there and walk away, what happens, unless your mulch is already wet from the rain or something like that, the mulch is going to pull the moisture away from the plant, and you will look and see that they look wilted the following day. You're wondering, I watered them when I just put them in. Why is that happening? That's because the mulch wasn't watered and it's pulling the moisture away from the plant. So that's a step you'll want to add in there as well. So over to the seeds now, guys. So I went ahead and I got these. I said, let me try them and see what happens. And I had my soil there and had everything ready to get going. And then, I just opened up my pack and this is what I saw. There were not a lot of seeds in there at all. So I thought that was kind of surprising. And I'm not knocking any particular brand. Everybody has their own experiences. But personally, I was hoping that I'd have seen more seeds in there, because when you're planting something from seeds, you want to put as many as you can, so you have a more likely chance of getting a few of them that are going to be healthy, because they're not all going to be healthy together. You'll have to thin them out anyway. So it's good to have a lot of choices there. And the next thing that happened to me, guys, is that, I went in and I covered them over, of course, taking my time with a trowel here, not putting them too deep, because if you put them too deep, that's a problem as far as germination goes. So I just, scratched over the surface a little bit. And then after I had done that, I made sure to go in and I took the back of the trowel and I just flattened them down a little bit, because you want to have contact with the soil. You want them to, feel a little bit of something going on around them. So they're like, okay, I'm in the ground. I need to start growing and coming up. So that's pretty much what this step does. So I did all of that, guys, and I had them planted, and guess what? They did not germinate. They did not for me. See me watering them here and everything. I followed all the steps that I typically do. And sometimes maybe the seeds could have just been there for a long time, and so they're not viable anymore because seeds don't last for too long. I did purchase them at the garden center. I did not look at the expiration date, so that was my fault. But they did not germinate. So let me know if that's ever happened to you, any of the seeds that you have gotten, and what you did. So since that happened to me, I went ahead and I just got some pink ones like I did the white ones, and I planted them over in the container right there. And after about 2 weeks, this is how they were looking. They were starting to spread out a little bit. You can see how they're looking there. And I was already so happy that I made that decision. So guys, when things happen, just look for alternatives, do something else so that you'll feel better about the whole gardening process. And this is what they were looking like a couple of weeks, maybe about 2 months in or so. They had completely grown up and covered over the side of the container. They were just absolutely gorgeous. And I was so happy with them. And if you look in there, you can see some little baby ones coming up too, because when the seeds fall from the plant, then they're going to go ahead and, give you some newer ones. And you can always take those out and plant them somewhere else. And of course, if you want to get even more blooms than I did, it's good to put like plant food on there. And you have different choices that you can make here. 2 tablespoons to 2 gallons of water, and just water that when the soil is wet, and they'll be good to go. You'll get lots more blooms, and it's going to be beautiful for you. And you can see how they're looking right here. I think they're just so absolutely gorgeous. And of course, you can use different colors, as you like. And I just wanted to pause for a moment to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you've never done so before. I do lots of gardening topics, tips, and tours. And I also like to exchange ideas with fellow gardeners, as well as to encourage newer gardeners as they come along. Just to show you what the white one was looking like, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks in. You can see how they filled in together. You can't even tell one from the other anymore. And as more time went by, the same thing happened here again too. They completely spilled over, just mounded over, and they were looking so fabulous. And this is a plant that you don't need to deadhead. Deadhead meaning you're pinching off the spent blooms. They just fall off and you don't need to do anything. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is this pest right here. I think this is a thrip, but look what it did to the croton that was next to this plant. And it can do the same thing to the impatiens as well. They go in and they suck the juice and they damage the plants and they will die. So what I did was I went in and I took off the damaged leaf and I sprayed with insecticidal soap. This is the one that I use here. Some people make their own homemade insecticidal soap from maybe like Dawn dishwashing liquid, maybe a little pinch of baking soda. It just depends on what you want to use, guys. But go in and treat them at the first sign of any pests coming in, because if your plants have pests, then they're going to get diseases because they're weak. So bear those things in mind. Another thing again too is as they grow further and further in the season, because this was like I'd say in the very late summer, maybe like about I'd say maybe like just early September, they started to get a little bit leggy. So I could have gone in before it got to this point and trimmed them further back. Because at this point, I just didn't want to mess with them because I knew it was coming close to the end of the growing season for them. Sadly, they're annuals, like I said earlier, so they're not going to make it through the winter. But this is how this one was looking. This was a final look, final time before the frost came. And what I wanted to tell you was the blooms, I'm not sure if you could tell relative to the size of my hand, but the blooms actually got bigger. So each flower head was bigger than the original ones. Absolutely gorgeous. And guys, this is what happened, just to show you when the first frost came, how they got damaged. They were got frost bitten. And I won't show you any further because after this it just becomes mush. So if you don't want to see all of that, you can go ahead and just trim them back before the first hard freeze comes, so that we don't have to see all of that. And just save your seeds. You can always go ahead and have them saved for the following year, because as you can see, mine did better with my own seeds than it did from the ones that I bought. Now, as far as watering goes, the soil tells a story. Just reach in and see if the soil feels dry. If it feels dry, it's time to water them. If the soil is still feeling moist, then you don't need to do anything. Typically, I'd say maybe 2 to 3 times per week. If you mulch them, you have to water less because it helps to retain moisture in there. So it's always good to put that when you're planting your impatiens and any other flowers for that matter. So that should basically help you as far as satisfying the watering needs of this plant. And once they die off, if you have the seeds, if you save them, you can plant them, or you can just go back the following year and plant them again in the springtime. But this is a wonderful plant that you can plant in your shady areas. It's a perfect solution and it's really, really low maintenance. So I highly recommend it. So I want to wish you happy gardening. Thanks again for stopping by, and I do hope to see you in the next video. Take care.